Next, he has braved some of the most perilous situations in the world, but now his most intimidating assignment, dancing the cha-cha-cha on national television. It's political journalist Tucker Carlson and his professional partner Elena Granyenko.
My name is Tucker Carlson. I'm a journalist. I wrote for magazines and newspapers for about 10 years, and I've been in television news for about 6. There are some unknown number of Israeli forces, in the hundreds, maybe the thousands. When I first got the call about doing this, I thought they must be calling the wrong guy. My dance experience consists of drinking too much at a couple rehearsal dinners. It's all about the wedding performance, baby.
Are you ready for a brand new beat? Summer's here and the time's right. We're dancing in the street, dancing in Chicago, down in New Orleans, New York City. All we need is music, sweet music.
All right. Happy May Day, comrades and friends, ladies and gentlemen, etc. All of the relevant phrases there. So the clip that you just watched was, of course, of, friend of the show, but no longer friend of Fox News, Tucker Carlson, dancing on television for some reason. We are going to... I don't know. We're going to be doing a Tucker deep dive today. We have some GTAA All-Stars on, got Naomi Karavani, R.M. Brown, Branko Marcetic. But before we get to the Tucker talk, I do want to talk a little bit about May Day. I should say I was so blown away by Tucker's performance, I forgot to say. My name is Ben Burgis. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined, as always, by our super producer, Jake Abbott, and by our very talented graphic designer, J. Andrew World. And yeah, we do have a couple things that we want to get to before we get to Tucker. First one is that it is, in fact, May Day today, which is, if you do a Google search for May Day, the first Wikipedia entry come up will be the, dancing around maypoles version of May Day.
Actually, I think it's Justin Timberlake you get to first, and then it's the dancing around maypoles.
Fair enough. But the entry on the May Day that we mean is called International Workers' Day, because, of course, that is what it is. This is, this is recognized that way practically everywhere except for the United States, where we put Labor Day on this totally different day months away. Which is a little bit funny because, as I'm sure one of you bright gentlemen can tell me, why is International Workers' Day on May 1st? What's that all about?
I believe that might have something to do with the Haymarket Massacre.
Yeah. And the which took place in which country?
The foreign country of Chicago.
Yes, exactly.
Exotic Chicago.
Yeah, technically located in the United States of America. It's the same country that we're all in various parts of.
Well, we all know it's part of Kenya because Obama was from there.
Or I vaguely remember hearing that. But in any case, yeah. So the Haymarket, massacre took, was sort of culminating event after these 4 days of this general strike that was about demanding a 8-hour workday. And this is, this is a struggle that was ongoing for a very long time afterward, and, is only really achieved in the late 1930s It's the Fair Labor Standards Act caps off the workday at 40 hours. This is non-coincidentally happening at the same time as the solidification of the American labor movement, that these sort of big industrial unions affiliated with the CIO that started in the 30s, getting a lot of their initial victories and sort of establishing this, legal system of collective bargaining for the first time through National Labor Relations Act. And this, it's, also not a coincidence that we're coming out of decades of stagnation and defeat for the workers' movement, and that the work week hasn't lowered any since 1938. Unless you work for GTAA, in which case you're expected to devote every waking hour to this podcast. Otherwise, the legal cap is 40 hours, and you could work a little bit extra if you're paid overtime, whatever. But that means that you don't get one single solitary less hour a week than your grandfather got, because that is what a broken system with a profoundly disempowered working class gets you. So last week we talked a little bit about something that Bernie Sanders has been pushing, among other people, which is to deepen the victory of the 1930s, and God, I mean, you can go back to like mid 19th century Britain if you read Marx's Capital. Chapter 10 is all about the working day is about the struggle for a 60-hour work week. In that case, 10 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, and the kind of bitter and protracted struggle that it took to achieve that. But of course, there has been this massive increase in labor productivity since 1938. It would be nice if some of that went to increased leisure time for the working class. This is why people like Bernie are talking about a 32-hour work week. And we have a clip of actual, not using this in the usual shitty way we use this phrase, but actual friend of the show, Kyle Kulinski, talking about that.
This article is in Jacobin and is written by friend of the show, Ben Burgis. Everybody go check out his YouTube channel and his various articles. Bernie Sanders is calling for reduction in the work week to 32 hours at full-time pay. He's absolutely right. Gains in productivity should serve the working class. Earlier this month, Bernie Sanders renewed his longstanding call to reduce the work week to 32 hours. He pointed out that there have been huge advances in technology and productivity in the 8 decades and change since the Fair Labor Standards Act capped the work week at 40 hours. So here are his exact words. In 1940, the Fair Labor Standards Act reduced the work week to 40 hours. Today, as a result of huge advances in technology and productivity, now is the time to lower the work week to 32 hours with no loss in pay. Workers must benefit from advanced technology, not just the 1%. Critics argue that it's fine if technological advances deliver the shorter work week without government intervention, but that top-down interference in the free market is a bad idea. This idea doesn't stand up to even cursory scrutiny. If the reduction in hours was going to happen without being mandated, it would have happened long ago. Bernie is right. If we want increased productivity to benefit the working class, we need to take political action to make that happen. The idea is slowly gaining traction. Last year, a state-level version was proposed in California. And this March, there was an attempt in Congress to institute a 32-hour work week by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act. So, look, on this one, shout out to California. They also led the way when it comes to generic medicine. They're doing their own, California State Insulin Factory, which they're going to sell at a much lower cost than what insulin goes for from the pharmaceutical companies. They're doing sectoral bargaining when it comes to unions for fast food workers. So they're going to set wages across the entire industry, which is a phenomenal idea. And by the way, it's by doing things like sectoral bargaining that people get paid even above and beyond what a minimum wage should be because the union's protecting all the workers in that industry. That's phenomenal. And apparently they gained they proposed a state level 32-hour work week there recently. So he goes on to say, right now these efforts face an uphill battle to say the least. The California bill stalled out in 2022, though it could be amended and reintroduced this year. The federal attempt is going to be strangled in the crib, as a matter of course. It was introduced in the House Education and Workforce Committee, whose chair, Republican Representative Virginia Foxx of North Carolina, has said that blanket federal regulations often cause more harm than good because they don't account for the unique needs of various groups, and that Main Street America doesn't need more top-down federal mandate. That's hilarious. I love how she tries to frame it as like it's being pro-Main Street to be against a 32-hour work week, when obviously almost everybody on Main Street would be like, hell yeah, we want a 32-hour work week. He continues, all of this top-down mandates talk, all this talk of top-down mandates makes me wonder what Fox or Shackelford would think about bottom-up mandates imposed by strong labor unions. I suspect neither of them would support the PRO Act or similar efforts to create a more favorable legal environment for organizing unions. That's such a great point. They're like, we're against the government intervening to say 32-hour work week. We're against top-down enforcement. So Burgis is like, okay, what about bottom-up enforcement? What if the union said, let's do 32 hours? They'd still oppose it. This is who they are. They're just not in favor of it, but they find weaselly ways to say they're not in favor of it, or weaselly reasons to say they're not in favor of it.
Yeah. So this is just clearly something that's not going to happen without somebody making it happen, whether the regulatory state, a reinvigorated labor movement, or both. But just realized I had a prop there for reinvigorated labor movements. But in any case, we will be talking more about this. But just wanted to highlight that again on May Day. Was also very happy to see somebody in the chat saying the federal workers in Canada just got a tentative agreement. By the way, Rutgers, we covered the Rutgers strike extensively when that was happening. Also, just got a tentative agreement. It was like a little bit complicated because the governor had been mediating it, and we ended up going back to work for a framework that wasn't like a fully fleshed out TA. But there is a tentative agreement now embodying all those gains. The 43% increase for pay for adjuncts, and a lot of the other, demands at the time. So strikes work. More strikes, please. Either of you guys have anything about this before we move on to the next topic?
The only thing I would add is, I even saw Dave Rubin talking about this. I think it popped up on my TikTok about, we should be afraid of automation because what that means for labor conditions, but people act as if it's I'm not the first to make this point, but it's a bit tiring to see people act like it's the automation that's making the labor conditions worse, as opposed, to the relative power of America's workers to actually benefit from the fact that, overall the workforce is so much more efficient. So it's not the technology itself. And even if people are just doing it kind of not on purpose, I think it's a mistake to kind of cede this power to just like this, completely non-judgmental force of history that is technological improvements, because that's been happening for a long time and that isn't new. Yeah, exactly. And, under different political conditions, technological improvements could just made a shorter work week, right? In fact, there have been a massive amount of technological improvement since the last time the work week was lowered. It just not in conditions of class struggle that enable workers to capture those productivity gains for themselves, either in terms of meaningfully higher wages or shorter hours. Okay. So there are just a couple more things that we want to get to before we bring on our panel and talk about Tucker. But first, I had something. But first, I know Andy, you've been following this story in Florida with about Disney versus DeSantis,
And I know you have a different perspective on this, and you think that a lot of progressives are kind of missing the boat on an important part of this story. So, you want to kind of take a minute and fill us in on that?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure who was I was fighting with on Twitter, because just like people were coming into my timeline, and like adding me with the weird stuff. But basically, Ron DeSantis has been going after Disney because they apparently are against his "Don't Say Gay" bill.
Right.
And there's this weird thing where Disney has like this right of land that that they control, like have a board of governors that controls, and that the state allows them to make decisions. The Ron DeSantis tried to pull that power from Disney, and because of Disney speaking out against his anti-trans stuff, and
Right.
now Disney's suing Ron DeSantis, because of this. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sit well with me at all. Like people were actually like going on Twitter going like, yeah, go Disney, take the fight to Ron. And I'm just like, wait, no, this is bad. This is bad. Cause like anytime somebody's, a corporation is suing somebody because of like trying to basically have more power, that usually is a bad thing for the workers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are two issues going on here. I mean, I haven't followed this closely, so maybe you can correct me on this, but I think that the actual legal argument Disney is using is that they're, being retaliated against for speech, basically.
No,
no.
that is not.
Okay.
That is how the media is portraying it. If you actually
Okay.
look at the suit itself, it's actually talking about contract law. And it's very specifically going back to the Lochner era of courts, where like basically the Supreme Court helped codify a lot of monopolies of the era that took a good chunk of the 20th century to like unwind, and then the end of the 20th century they started winding back up. So this would actually like destroy laws created to protect us that were done after as a result of the Lochner era. Which is what it looks like, and that's the problem with this case, is that it's they're saying the news people are reporting that this is a free speech issue, and it's not, and that's not even how the case is. Mark Joseph Stearns and Slate has a fantastic article on this, which I recommend everybody to read, because he actually covers the history really well, which is where I'm pulling a lot of this stuff from. Thankfully, because it was better than my trying to guess like what it was just by my layman's reading of everything. But it's a fantastic article, and he does go walks you through the history to understand like where what these laws are that they're fighting, how they're writing the case, and what the effects are of it. Or fairly clearly. I don't think he goes into that much detail of the effects, but gives you a pretty solid idea that this is like a Jason versus Freddy fight. No matter who wins, we lose.
Fun fact: when I saw that movie in the theater back in whatever that was, 2009 or something.
Yeah, you said this is just like Disney versus DeSantis.
Yeah, and then nobody at the theater had any idea what the fuck I was talking about. Said, all right, I know what Disney is. What's this DeSantis in which you speak? Yeah, no, I remember I was pulled over for speeding or something. I don't remember what I was pulled over for, on my way back from the theater. And the cop asked me what I've been watching. And I said Freddy versus Jason. We ended up having this like 5-minute conversation about Freddy and Jason, and then he just let me go.
Yeah, it sounds like when I got arrested for an art show and the cop locking me up in the cell told me that he liked my Goonies shirt and tried to start up a conversation about me about Goonies. And I'm like completely freaking out at this point about being locked in a cell.
Sure. Goonies never said die. You gotta keep up your courage in the face of that situation.
Yes. The last thing to add, which is a really out of pocket comment and concept, is imagining, Andy, just like the chaos of who you're fighting with on Twitter at this point, not even knowing who you're fighting with. It reminded me of that Creed Braden quote from The Office, where he's talking about how he's not offended by homosexuality, and he says, "In the 60s, I made love to many, many women, often outdoors in the mud and the rain. And it's possible a man slipped in. There would be no way of knowing. That reminds me of just what's going on in your Twitter mentions. Who knows? There's no way of knowing who's in there fighting with you. It could be anybody at this point. It's a lot. So really out of pocket comment, but yeah.
Well,
I had
fair
to make that
enough.
analogy.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, look, DeSantis sucks. The don't say gay stuff sucks. I also think it's probably a little short-sighted for people to be cheering for a mega corporation try to retain the closest 21st century equivalent of a company town in Florida. Okay, so I did have one other thing I wanted to bring up before we go to our panel. So that is about this controversy that I've been seeing bubbling up, in the mud and rain of Twitter about Adolf Reed. So there is a book that's coming out soon of essays by Adolf Reed and Walter Ben Michael that it's called No Politics But Class Politics. And this has been controversial, not just because, those are controversial guys. They say lots of controversial things. It's to be expected. But because of one particular essay that's been reprinted in it and some, Twitter sleuths. Yeah, that's the book, No Politics But Class Politics. We'll see if we can get one of them on the show when it comes out to talk about it. But because Twitter sleuths seen one particular essay that's being reprinted in this book, which is an old essay, as you can tell from the title, called From Jenner to Dolezal, about these two incidents that had just happened like very recently before he wrote it, or sort of two controversies, one about Caitlyn Jenner and one about Rachel Dolezal. And he's using it to sort of explore race and gender. And, he's sort of, interrogated this idea that people had that being trans is one thing, but, you just are what you are when it comes to race. Anybody who's familiar with Adolf Reed's body of work on race would kind of know what his objection to that last assumption would be. He's always been very strongly a race isn't real guy. And then as a sort of secondary point, I think he, Adolf Reed supports trans rights. I think he said that in several places, but I think he was also just kind of offended by the valorization of Caitlyn Jenner as an individual because of Caitlyn Jenner's politics, which actually I think he was probably a little early to the party on. I think a lot more people have realized since then what Caitlyn stands for. And so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about whether to say anything about this mini controversy. And I remember that I actually interviewed Adolf Reed back in 2020, like August 2020, when I think GTA had already started. It was during the overlap between the two, but I was still co-hosting the Dead Pundit Society with Adam Proctor and Brianna Last. And we were interviewing Reed, and I asked him about this essay and people's reactions to it and some of the ways that people were misinterpreting it. And I kind of think interpreted it as saying the opposite of what it's saying. And, it's an old clip. It's like on a B-side. That's like what that's what we would call the equivalent of like a post game on Dead Pundit Society. And so that podcast has been on hiatus forever. So this is pretty buried, and I think it would be relevant to sort of understanding Reed's own thinking about some of this stuff. So before I brought it on the panel, I just wanted to play this clip from DPS of me asking Reed about this essay. One thing I was just thinking about, right, since you mentioned the analogy to gender earlier, is an essay that you wrote, I don't know, several years back about Rachel Dolezal.
Oh yeah.
And
I understand that essay made heads explode all over the country.
Yeah. Well, I've had conversations with people that have literally gone like this. They say, "Oh yeah, you should read Adolf Reed. He's great." And they say, "Oh no, Adolf Reed is transphobic." I said, "Really? Where are you getting that?" Right? They say, "Oh well, there's this essay, And the more we talk, the more I realize that somehow they managed to read that essay as saying that since we should all clearly be essentialists about race, therefore we should all be essentialists about gender also, rather than the other way around, right? Just sort of saying that there's an analogy between these two cases, right? The only way they can process that, right? They're so committed to this kind of taxonomy about race that the only way they can process saying that there is not in fact some big principal distinction between being transgender and being transracial is by saying, oh, therefore, because being therefore, because we should clearly dismiss what Dolezal is saying, therefore we should dismiss what Jenner is saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Which is kind of a bizarre one. I mean, Joanna Wiest, who was a grad student in our department, told me she's been defending me all over the world about this essay because I had no idea that people would have read it that way.
Well, they didn't read it at all. They just projected their own understanding.
I mean, they read enough.
And then read the lead and then figured out, like, wait a minute, he's obviously essentializing race because that's the only fucking way you can talk about race. Right. So clearly he's just therefore trans.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny too. Like I came across somebody a few weeks ago on somebody else's Twitter feed or something who referred to that article to the one trans good, the other not so much piece, and took issue. Like, this person's charge that I'm transphobic was that I insisted on referring to Jenner as a Republican Jenner. And my point was that, and see, this is like another place where Chris Rock's famous question, whatever happened to crazy, just comes up because at one point in time in this world, this motherfucker was known as Bruce. And at another point, she's known as Caitlin. And you can accept that what once was Bruce is now Caitlin. And my point was that the one identity that, or to me, the most significant identity that Jenner maintained was the one that was continuous between Bruce and Caitlin, and that was this motherfucker was a Republican. I don't understand why we're supposed to be kissing a Republican ass all over the world.
I kind of forgot how much Adolf Reed swears in that clip. I hope we don't get demonetized. But yeah, I think that there is, I think there's a discussion to be had about, that. I mean, to my mind, I think the core of the essay is what I said earlier. There's this strong secondary point, which is about like not worrying so much about, who's supposedly, is or is not like really what, in their inner essence, which nobody else could tell anyway. And, we shouldn't really need to, in terms of having civil rights laws and non-discrimination and all that stuff, we sort of don't need to adjudicate that first. And, caring about people's role in the real world, in which case, Jenner's role is pretty awful. I mean, if you look at, it's not just, it's not like Adolf Reed just, looked up her voter registration. And it's like, aha, Republican, right? Like this is like lifelong advocacy. And for right-wing causes, and including actually not even being great on a lot of trans rights issues, because I think that he might have had a point there that the identity that tells you the most about how she's going to act in the world is Republican Jenner. When the two come into conflict. So in any case, for whatever that's worth, just to get Reed's own perspective on the controversy about his essay, I wanted to throw that in. I want to bring in our guests in just a minute, but beforehand, if either of you guys wanted to weigh in on this at all.
Yeah, I remember when she was running for governor last year, the recall election.
Mm-hmm.
The like first thing that I heard about was something about like complaining about private jets, about like having like a certain class of people being at that airport that prevents the reason why you have private jets or some kind of complaint. I don't remember the exact quote or anything like that. I was quickly trying to see if I could look it up, but it's such a, like a minor thing. And it's just like, that's Caitlyn Jenner right there is the person who complains about the plebes at the private airport.
Yeah. That's, do you watch Succession?
No.
There was this whole thing in Succession, one of the earlier seasons, where the Roy family was talking about maybe giving up their private jets, and one of the kids was really upset about that. And he's like, look, first they came for the PJs. All right. All right. So I'm going to see Andy and Jake in the post game. We're also going to be joined by our live show producer, Jordan, and we're going to be talking about a couple of Slavoj Žižek articles. Should be a lot of fun. But right now, we are joined by R.M. Brown and Naomi Karavani and Branko Marcetic. How you guys doing tonight?
What's up? Great. How are you? How are you guys?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Nice to meet you. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, nice.
Absolutely.
To meet you. I got my vape too.
Okay, vape crew. Perfect. Yeah, I'm shocked at myself how addicted I've become to this. I was always, when vapes first came out, was like, that's embarrassing. I'm never going to do that. And now I cannot stop with this.
No, it's so much better than smoking cigarettes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a vapist. I'm a sworn vapist.
Branko, do you have a vape take?
They're probably bad for you.
Bringing us down.
Like a safe guess.
Yes. Way to get past the kind of decades of work to kind of eradicate smoking. They're like turn into this delicious bubblegum candy thing that you can just have at any moment. I'm not saying that I don't judge anyone for smoking, but it is when I think about it from a marketing business perspective, I'm like, wow, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Do you remember, Ben, do you remember Dennis Leary when he would do that comedy where he's like, I love smoke. He's all about smoke. He's like, oh, smoking's so great. Maybe there needs to be a vape Dennis Leary,
Yeah.
defending how stupid vaping is.
Yeah. Do like a updated version of the Asshole song where it's just about how he's vaping everywhere. Absolutely.
Yes.
Nice. Well, speaking of assholes, so Tucker Carlson was recently let go at Fox News. We were just talking about Succession, and it seemed like very much a ATN firing, that you sort of find out in this very sudden way, after you did your last on-air appearance. And he has, I believe this is still his only communication since then. Jake, if we have this this video, that he's just done this like little 2-minute video about, he doesn't actually say the word Fox at any point, but it's like basically about his departure from Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
That's his pitch for Rumble, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing too. You guys probably have a deeper thought on this, but just aesthetically, to honor the late great Jerry Springer, it does feel like a Jerry Springer final thought.
Yes.
Remember? Like, it would be like an hour of people that he paid $200 to throw chairs at each other, and they'd be like, you know what, this is actually about a deeper meaning here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which seems
maybe
like
you are actually the father.
But it does feel like, because I don't know, maybe you guys know more. I read a little bit about the internal reasons for him being fired. It sounds like it's probably something stupid, like he was in those private texts saying bad things about managers or something, but now he's trying to make it this big thing. But yeah, that's what it feels like. Feels like also he can't stop doing his show. You know what I mean? Like this could be a more laid back video, but he can't stop doing it.
Yeah, he's got to put on the tie.
Yeah,
and everything. Like, oh man.
I like that he threw demographics in there. He did the list of important topics like resources and war and civil liberties, and he just throws demographic change. I think Nathan Robinson put it best in his reaction to this video, where he said basically, I'd take him more seriously on this if he hadn't spent like 3 different episodes talking about how the green M&M was no longer fuckable.
Yeah,
So shout out to Nathan for that one.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there like definitive information out there about why he was fired?
I mean, I think, I've read a bunch of stories about this. I don't think there's anything definitive, and who knows, maybe there won't be. But so far, I've seen reports at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, maybe a few other places that are all based on kind of like insider information sources, within Fox News talking to these reporters. And it seems like it was a combination of kind of, number one, the several lawsuits that were hitting, including for Tucker, being a thoroughly unpleasant person to the people who work under him.
That's not a deciding factor at Fox News.
No, not always. But it seems like it may have hit a wall at some point, and especially as part of this lawsuit, there was going to be stuff that was going to come out apparently of videos that they didn't want to hit the public. Tucker calling his fans post-menopausal and all this kind of stuff. There was the fact that all these segments he did on January 6th, advertisers were like the big name, the really big blue chip advertisers were like, I'm not dealing with this person anymore. So that was part of it. And I think also it seems like there was a general sense that he thought he was bigger than the network. And I guess the Murdochs.
And Murdoch was like, honey.
Yeah. But I mean, it's, I have seen very, very little to no evidence that, his supposedly heterodoxical positions on war and liberties and have played any real role at all.
He's the only truth teller about the Ukraine.
Yeah, that's the only one. That's the only explanation I don't believe, that he was just such a truth teller that they couldn't handle it. That doesn't add up.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. And as much as RM is completely right, I would not have made the connection on my own. But now that you've made it, I can't unsee it, unhear it. It does sound remarkably like the intonation and like rhythms of a Jerry Springer final thought at the end of the episode. But I will say that you do get a sense from that clip of, just how good Tucker is at projecting this image. That, I despise the guy, but honestly, if he hadn't, if not for the turn in the punch bowl of throwing in demographic change as one of these serious issues that we're not being allowed to have a debate about, if he'd left that out, then I kind of want to nod along to most of that video. It's cable news is all bullshit.
He's part of it, but yeah,
he's a huge part of it. It's a leading offender, but it's yes, it is all bullshit. It does distract us with nonsense. Most of those are important issues we should be talking more about. People should be, we should want people to sort of be less worked up about, hating each other over, sort of constant cultural circus things and all these other things. Yeah. Yes, and yes. But I also would argue, have argued, so I've had a piece in Jacobin on Saturday saying this very directly, that, this is the character he played on TV, and he's really good at playing that character, but that doesn't actually mean that doesn't actually mean that that's who he really was. I mean, in fact, if you look at Tucker Carlson's overall career, he played a few different characters on different shows, and this sort of bold populist truth teller guy was the most recent one. But he started off in really different place, actually. Jake, do we have the Iraq clip? So this is Tucker on Bubba the Love Sponge in 2006.
These Arabs in Iraq aren't playing. Yeah. We're the only ones that are playing.
They don't like us.
We are the only ones that are playing over there. They're not playing.
Also so just awful.
They're animals, dude.
Awful.
They are. I'm telling you that.
The war. I have no. I'm not defending the war in any way, but I just have zero sympathy for them or their culture. A culture where people just don't use toilet paper or forks.
And the way they treat women. I agree with you. Their culture is. But you're in their homeland. And you're over there as an American who they hate, and they want nothing more than the Americans off of their soil. So they're not going to play games.
They can just shut the fuck up and obey, is my view. And the second we leave, they're going to be calling for us to return because they can't govern themselves.
Yeah, I think bidets are more popular in the Middle East than here.
I like how very deeply concerned Tucker Carlson is for the treatment of women in Iraq. That's really touching to me. Guy who has a steadfast track record. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Carlson and this latest iteration of his persona is he was very good at threading this particular needle where he would say enough, he would give enough kind of populist-y window dressing to the things that he was saying to make you think, oh yeah, this guy is he's opposed to the establishment, he's opposed to kind of establishment politics, and he kind of, he has a lot of reasonable criticisms of both the political order and the media and stuff. Yeah, this makes sense. But then it was a very well kind of laid trap where he would say that stuff, and then he would always kind of find a way to turn your attention, if you're the viewer, away from the actual problems into whatever kind of particular right-wing obsession that he actually wanted to people to focus on. And you kind of covered that in your piece, Ben, with I think the baby formula shortage was a very good one, where he kind of pays lip service to people are struggling to find baby formula. They're really hurting. This is all because of this is because partly the government's incompetence and the Biden administration isn't doing stuff. It's saying that it can't do anything when it should be acting. All of this is stuff that could number one, appeal to people who are, not particularly ideological, but also would appeal even to people kind of, on the left who are watching this and going, yeah, I do feel like the Biden administration is kind of pawning off responsibility and just saying it can't do anything. But then what does he actually say is the problem? It's not that, there was one that this company Abbott was spending money on stock buybacks instead of improvements to its technology and its facilities, which ended up kind of causing this these safety problems that forced it to shut down. It wasn't that. No, it's because there's this anti-poverty program that the government is running, and it's a government monopoly, and that's the problem. It's the government again, Yeah, and it's just a standard neoliberal talking point. The problem is that there's too much government, and they need to get off the back of private companies.
These babies have had it too good for too long. Sucking on this free milk.
It's true. So he says, there's this program, the WICs, Women, Infant, and Children, is I think what they originally stood for, which basically provides low-income mothers with vouchers they could use to buy baby formula, which, sounds okay on the face of it. But Carlson said, this is the quote, the problem right now is the Abbott Nutrition Company has made baby formula for the vast majority of WIC contracts. The government had all its eggs virtually in Abbott's basket. Unfortunately, Abbott just closed its plant in Sturgis, Michigan because of contamination. And that means millions of people who use WIC to buy Abbott products are forced to buy competing formulas. And they're all doing it at once. So what he never does at any point in there is stop to say, well, why did this contamination happen at the Abbott factory in Sturgis? What does the FDA say about that? That would be a Google search away. Lax safety practices of this company, which one would think a bold populist truth teller would have something to say about. The sort of greedy, profit-seeking incentives that that led them to have shitty safety practices and cause this nationwide baby formula shortage. When they had to close down the plant. His focus is on too many of these damn low-income mothers using their vouchers all at once at other companies, and that's, in his mind, the singular cause of the baby formula shortage.
Right, and by the way, there is real government, whatever incompetence or malfeasance, whatever you want to say, involved in this story that he could have called out if he wants to criticize the government doing stuff. In this case, it's that the government didn't do stuff. There was, I believe, state regulators had sounded the alarm about this. I think in 2021, late 2021, there were other warning signs that had been given to regulators, and they didn't act on it. And that's partly why that whole thing ended up becoming such a crisis. But the thing is that Tucker Carlson doesn't want the government to do stuff. He doesn't want the state to step in and to make sure that that private companies are acting the way they should be and that they're actually following safety practices. He wants private companies to be allowed to do what they want.
Put arsenic in the baby formula.
So what's the government whatever incompetence supposedly that he ends up targeting? It's the fact that there's a program for the poor, that there's handouts being given out to people who are struggling.
Well, actually, so I'd be curious if about when this guy first appeared at each of your TV sets, because I think I could remember pretty exactly. But
in the bow tie era?
Yeah, bow tie era, probably. Yeah, definitely. I remember, of course, the Jon Stewart thing where Jon Stewart was giving him a hard time was probably because he was, he was definitely not the force that he is now. Back then, he was just sort of a goofball who Jon Stewart made fun of. That was pretty much, that's how I remember him during that time.
Yeah, CNN used to have the show Crossfire, which it was it was like a liberal and a conservative arguing about the news, which is look, not a format I'm even necessarily against. I think it's like good to have people get different perspectives in the same show. I think
Now we only have that on like Bill Maher, and that's it, right?
Yeah. Shout out to
5 minutes of it, and that's it.
Going on Bill Maher. But yeah, right. Like I think Crossfire was maybe a particularly dumb version of it, right? But it's like that was the idea. And originally, I don't know if there's one before him. I remember the first conservative being Pat Buchanan, and so make whatever Crossfire jokes you want, want to make about that. But then there was, and it might have been like Mary Madeline for a minute. But anyway, yeah.
I forgot about her. Yeah.
That it was
James Carville's wife, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The married
the married opponents, I guess.
The rival spin doctors.
Rivals. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it shows that both corporate liberals and right-wing reactionaries can actually find stuff to agree on.
Absolutely,
it turns out that they agree on a lot.
You know what I was thinking though? Maybe I don't know if you guys remember the Britney Spears interview, the Tucker Carlson Britney Spears interview.
No, I actually don't remember.
That was making the rounds. Yeah, what happened there?
It was like it was when Britney Spears kissed Madonna on a VMA thing or something, and it's a funny interview. It's a very awkward, embarrassing, but it's a classic. I think that might be the one I remember the most.
Well, so he was disapproving of this. I can only assume, given this was in the 2000s.
He was just kind of like, he was asking her questions like, "Would you ever kiss a girl again?" And she was like, "What?" And she was like shocked. It was like that kind of thing. Okay. It was just like a really dumb, sort of sensational interview where she's chewing gum really loud the whole time. It's really funny.
I remember. Yeah, the clip that was making the rounds was like him asking very seriously. So.
Yeah.
How much Pepsi do you actually drink?
Yes.
And
yes.
I was going to say that it's quite a difference from his green M&M stance, the bold stance he took in that controversy. But clearly, it's actually I got to give him a hand. He's always been consistently horny.
Yes. Well, I have to say, I saw a chat here in Ben Burgis's audience. There are some green M&M stands in here. So
yeah, somebody. There's at least one person saying that as a good ally, they would still nail the green M&M now.
Absolutely.
Androgynous M&M, yeah.
Exactly. So I remember when Tucker, definitely the first time I saw Tucker on TV, he was doing the conservative character on Crossfire, and he was like, aesthetically at least, certainly a very different kind of conservative back then. I mean, he was anybody who read the Chapo book from several years ago is the kind of conservative in their taxonomy there. They called a bow tie dipshit, it's like probably who they're thinking of primarily there. He wore a bow tie, and he initially had this like very straight down the line defense of the Bush administration in the early years of the war on terror. In fact, I believe I have to track down the clip, so it's possible I'm misremembering this, but I believe I can remember seeing Tucker on Crossfire defending indefinite detention. I think in an argument with Paul Begala. I think if I'm remembering correctly, Begala was taking the centrist position that maybe we could have like military tribunals for suspected terrorists, but not actually indefinite detention. And Tucker was like, "No, just lock him up."
There's a clip too. There's a really weird clip that I dug up. I don't know if you guys have seen this, where Hillary Clinton comes on the show. Have you seen that one?
No.
She brings him a cake because he said something that she wouldn't sell a certain number of books, and if he did, he would eat his shoe or something like that. He was doing the Werner Herzog thing of he would eat his shoe.
Yeah.
And she brought him a cake shaped like a shoe. And the video is bizarre because they're like joking like they're like best buds or something. It's
But he didn't need a real shoe. I mean, Werner Herzog showed it can be done, but like a coward, he refused to challenge.
He boiled it, right?
I believe he like stewed it for like an entire day or something. This is not the first time I came across Tucker Carlson, but there's an interesting little throwback to the pre-Trump era. This is I'm going to post it in the chat we have here on the show. It's an Esquire interview that Tucker Carlson did with Jeb Bush in 2009. So this is the very start of the Obama era, where like Jeb Bush is kind of presented as this guy's going to be the future leader of the Republican Party, and it's all about how Obama's exploding the deficit and so on and so forth. Of course, you can't imagine the post 2016 Tucker Carlson taking such a stance, but that shows you that fundamental fact about him, which is that like everyone on cable news, like the people at MSNBC that he performatively loathes, he plays a character. I mean, both Rachel Maddow and him, and by the way, Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson are like good friends, because I believe
actually among Tucker's crimes is that he inflicted Rachel Maddow on us because to be fair, I think she'd had a radio show before this, but I believe her first recurring thing on TV was being a panelist on Tucker's old MSNBC show.
There you go. And I mean, I think you should double check this. I'm not totally sure about this, but I fail to remember a single time that either Tucker has directly, I don't know why I'm using his first name like we're friends, that Tucker Carlson has either directly criticized her or that she's done the same for her. I feel like there's a conspicuous absence of anything like any sort of content like this. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that both of these people, when both MSNBC and Fox have been sued at different times, I think even those particular shows, actually, they both used the defense quietly. We actually just play characters on TV. We don't really believe in it and stuff. So you can't actually hold us accountable for the bullshit.
Yeah, like in court cases where they've argued that they're not liable for the things they say because nobody would take them seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Not a coincidence, I think.
Yeah, there's a great example of that in his last. I don't know if you guys saw. He's doing a documentary about eating bugs. Did you guys see that?
No,
I did actually see that one.
Yeah. Okay. So
I did see the comedy one.
Yeah. Right. So I guess there's a kind of, what would you call it? Like a conspiracy internet trope where I don't exactly know what it is. It's basically if we do anything about climate change, it's sort of like, I guess, a degrowth view of it or something, where it's, if we do anything about climate change, we're going to end up eating bugs. So he's doing a "We're going to eat bugs" documentary, and it's very like, if you watch the trailer for it, it's very scary. It looks like Children of Men or something, But he did a piece on his show to pump up that documentary, where he gets a guy from Brooklyn who has a boutique restaurant where he makes like fancy gourmet bugs on his show to give him bugs, and he eats like a chocolate bug, and he's like, "This is delicious." Then he eats the bug with the like grasshopper burger, and he's like, "It's delicious." So even in his giving the internet right or whatever what it wants, he's not really in it at all. You know what I mean? He just doesn't. He has no connection to it whatsoever. It's basically a joke to him.
Maybe his defenders are right. He is growing. He is changing. He's reconsidering some of those old views. He likes bugs now. Who knows? Maybe he really does oppose
Bourdain of bugs.
Absolutely. He's growing and changing.
But I don't know. I thought what was interesting, I mean, of course, in the texts that were revealed recently, okay, he makes fun of his fans, says they're postmenopausal, but I feel like you're going to find that in a lot of private texts of anybody famous.
Sure.
But I think the really shocking thing was how much he hates Trump.
Yeah.
And and he's just so annoyed, but he finds him embarrassing, which is so hilarious. And I'm indebted to my boyfriend for this, Anders Lee of Pod Damn America. Please like and subscribe. He pointed out that in 1999, Tucker wrote an article about George W. Bush, kind of along the same lines. He was embarrassed by him. He didn't like how he cursed. He used the F word, and that upset Carlson. And then, and he just said George W. Bush didn't like reading big books. He admitted in an interview, and he was just so embarrassed by him. And it's so funny that he had this obsession with professionalism his whole career, while doing M&Ms and eating bugs and.
Yeah, I really wonder, like, if all of the financial stuff and him wanting to be on Fox News, like a big media organization, if all that was taken away, like, what would Tucker Carlson actually do just for himself to, like, self-actualize? And I think he would do a show about Brooks Brothers ties and boat shoes. I think that's what it would be.
Yeah.
You know, that's what he really cares about, I think.
Entirely possible. But in terms of his public positions, so we were talking about bow tie era Carlson, where he was initially, you know, I mean, again, he was just like a very straight down the line Bush kind of Republican, and talked a little bit about bold populist truth teller trademark Carlson from Fox. But well, I know Branko knows the answer to this question, but I'm curious if the other two of you do. Between not that this is the only thing he was doing, but like, you know what Tucker was doing from 2009 to 2015?
I don't
remember. Yeah,
I was not keeping tabs.
Yeah, I was not. Tucker was off my radar at that point, I think.
Sure. Well, that makes sense. At least this aspect of what he's doing, there's no reason to be on your radar. But he was the think tank. He was a senior fellow.
Oh, no way.
At the Cato Institute.
Oh yeah.
Not surprising.
No, I did read that. Yeah.
Was he actually writing papers, or what was he doing?
I don't know. It might have been. It might have been
name.
It might have been the right wing version of like a Sopranos no-show job, but
that's how I picture it. Yeah, he's hanging out near the construction site all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I really want to know who else is on the lawn chairs with him in that scenario.
Dan Bongino, probably. I don't know.
But this is fascinating, right? So Tucker Carlson is officially a libertarian from 2009 through 2015, at least. And this is supposed to be, well, in some ways, there's continuity between that and what he's supposed to be now. You know, that there's, and, you know, to be fair, I actually think some of his better positions are consistent with libertarianism. As we will talk about, very selective anti-interventionism, but where there is the anti-interventionism, that makes sense as a libertarian thing. But economically, at least, this is supposed to be the opposite of what Tucker's about. I mean, the whole, you know, Tucker Carlson shtick is that he's this new kind of right-wing populist, that, you know, he's not like a corporate Republican, you know, he cares about the ruling class and, you know, hates the elites. So it would be interesting to see how much discontinuity there actually is between his policy positions in the Cato years and more recently, because, you know, the guy, like, okay, so here's what he, here's what he wrote about, or, you know, he said on his show about the effort to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know, he said that you know, he said that it would cost the economy 1 million jobs. He said about Medicare for all. This is in 2019. This is definitely supposed to be populist Tucker. He said, Medicare for all is actual socialism, for real socialism. Healthcare amounts to about 1/5 of the entire American economy. Elizabeth Warren, in this article, he's not even talking about Bernie, he's talking about Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren demands total control of all of it immediately. So how do you pay for Medicare for all? It is not a minor detail we can settle later. It is the single most important question about the program. Why do you think we don't have it already? Because we can't afford it. That's interesting. That's like populist Tucker's analysis of why we don't have Medicare for all. That we can't make the math work.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, oh, he's not a real populist. Oh my God, I can't believe it. He's faking it. Whoa, boy.
Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, I think it was in maybe end of 2021, I went through Tucker Carlson's broadcasts because I was curious. Okay, this guy's supposed to be an economic populist, but sort of conservative leaning with social conservative characteristics. So here's one way to actually measure his populism. What does he actually believe about basically every major issue that has come up in 2021, which you remember there was so many different major kind of questions about economic policy that kind of reached certain flashpoints at certain times. And you covered those, you covered the $50 minimum wage. He was against it, unless it's for large corporations, woke large corporations. If it's a small business, well, we have to think about the small business owner ahead of the rights of
he said he would be fine. He said he would be fine with a higher minimum wage if it were only for big business, which strikes me as okay. One, I mean seems like a way of squaring the circle of being populist, but also being opposed to any minimum wage hike that's proposed in the real world. That's like, oh yeah, supposedly you'd be in favor of this hypothetical version, but for now, no. But then two, like, okay, take it seriously. Like, assume for the sake of argument that he really thinks this. I mean, as I think you pointed out in that article a couple of years ago, Branko, I mean, this is 60 million people in the United States work for or classified as small businesses. So if you're one of those 60 million people, I mean, he's saying he's fine with you getting poverty wages to prop up your employer to, compete better, with
exactly.
And like, I think it's incredibly revealing because, like, honestly, I think at their most sincere, all these, supposed conservative populists have the lowest rung of the ladder they could bring themselves to even really pretend to care about are small business owners.
Remember, this is not a stance he took because he's a lawmaker who has to find some sort of compromise to pass. He's a guy on TV. He can say whatever he wants. He can imagine any sort of world that he wants, and the world that he the sort of limits to his kind of ideal world. That I think 60 million people who work for small businesses don't get $15 an hour is not even a living wage. It never really was, but it's well beyond that at 2021. I think that's interesting. Medicare for All is another good one. I mean, basically using the Biden administration or the Biden campaign's talking points against it. I mean, if you're someone on the left who genuinely on the left who thinks, okay, Tucker Carlson actually had some populist positions. If Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden came out and said, we're going to give a $15 minimum wage, but only for large corporations of this and this size and not for small business, would you say, oh my God, wow, that's such a bold populist proposal? Or would you say, oh, wow, this is more neoliberal half-measure bullshit? And of course, it'll be the latter. And so it's bizarre to me that people can give such leeway to Tucker Carlson to take these just milquetoast kind of positions that are constantly
how low are our standards?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's not the only one. Another big issue in 2021 was unemployment checks, expanded unemployment insurance. A lot of people on the left were calling on Biden to not let them expire, to kind of step in and prevent all these Republican governors from eliminating it. What did Tucker Carlson do with his, the top-rated show on cable news? He said, this is stopping people from working. People are being lazy because they're getting too much money. They don't have to work because they're getting $700 a month. We need to eliminate it so that people can get back to work. It was the same with the Build Back Better bill, which, pushed by a Democratic administration. But if you're a guy who cares
next
about
documentary I want to see is one on how is a financial tips documentary on how to make it by on $700 a month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to, on a Fox salary, it's hard to know, what. But I mean, that bill had all sorts of benefits for working Americans. If, presumably a guy who's not in the pocket of either party, a guy who's just a bold truth teller, talking about things for the benefit of the American people, surely he would say, hey, this is a really good bill and we should support it. And actually, if you're watching this, program. Go and support the president and Congress to pass this. No, Carlson never mentioned the Build Back Better bill. The months and months and months that he was wrangling over this to push it, he never mentioned it. The one time that I found, anyway, that he mentioned it, he basically cast it as a form of racial redistribution, and that was it. That was how he summed it up in one sentence, and then he just moved on. So I mean, at the end of the day, you should judge people maybe not even on their rhetoric, but actually on the positions they take on actual real issues. And I think on both of those things, Tucker Carlson reveals himself as a fraud.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw any of his coverage during the 2020 primary. I saw a couple of clips of him talking about Bernie, and basically the only thing that I saw him say was that Bernie was pro-immigrant, so he's bad, and that was it. That was the way to just get that out of the way.
Well, to be fair, he also did say Bernie Sanders wants to bring back socialism, and socialism has always failed where it's always been tried. Look at Cuba and Venezuela. So I mean. He also had some bold populist talking points about that too.
Never heard those before. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing, and that like there are people, I think, even on the left, who are a cheap enough date on those issues to say, "Oh well." Maybe I don't love all Tucker's, positions as social conservatives and whatever, but there's at least he's a, anti-war populist, and the populist part, I think we've, gone over pretty thoroughly here. My favorite, actually, I think the most revealing thing, we don't have it tonight, but, we've played this clip on the show before. Example of this was when he had Chris Smalls on his show, and I think Smalls handled it perfectly, but very transparently, the reason he had him on was that Smalls had been fighting with AOC on Twitter.
Right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because she'd been supposed to go to an Amazon workers rally, and then she'd canceled at the last minute, and there was some bad blood about that. And, I might not be remembering it exactly, but it was something like that. And so, he and AOC had exchanged some words about that on Twitter. Like clockwork, right? Chris Smalls gets the Tucker invitation, and it could not be more obvious that he's being invited on to talk about AOC. To say that actually AOC is a big fraud, whatever. Smalls declines the invitation. He's like, yeah, no, she wasn't there, but other politicians weren't there either. We had to do it by ourselves. And he starts talking about union stuff. And then Tucker just very obviously has no idea what to do with that. And it's like, okay, do I end the conversation now? And he lets this thing out, which I thought was very revealing, where he says, look, normally I'm not particularly pro-union.
Right.
But, Jeff Bezos is a bad guy. So, maybe it's good that he has to deal with the union. Which, again, says everything. Because, at absolute best, if you take the objection to sort of big corporate capital seriously, don't think it's 100% hot air. At best, that's not an objection on behalf of workers. It's a objection on behalf of smaller.
He just wants Bezos to have a bad morning.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but on the other end of the anti-war populist equation, it's the only thing that he seems to actually want to do to benefit at least native-born workers is to round up and deport immigrant workers. But at least he's anti-war, right? That's the gotta be the big, that's the left case for Tucker, that he's clearly an anti-war guy.
Well, he had on the gray zone people, so he's
exactly right. That is the a lot of people in that quarter of the left or left adjacent, whatever, I don't know that all those people would necessarily even claim in some cases to be leftist, but whatever, that they whatever you want to call them, right? That
Anti-imperial.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people who sort of think of as capital A, capital I anti-imperialists were willing to, had some time for Tucker and were willing to give some credit on this. And, there is a German truth to this, I think, which is that he's definitely against some wars. Even though he was originally a supporter of the Iraq War, and even in 2006, when he had already soured on it to some extent, he still thought the Iraqis were semi-literate primitive monkeys who just needed to obey. But he, I think it's fair to say, became more critical over the decades of the sort of Bush era wars in the Middle East. Certainly much better on civil liberties than he had been in the early 2000s. And this is the big one, people who don't want to believe that he was fired for, straightforward business reasons because he was implicated in like 20 lawsuits. Think, it must have been because of his stance on Ukraine. And we can certainly talk about what was good and bad about what he had to say about Ukraine. I actually think that one's a little bit complicated. But would it be fair, Branko, to say that this guy was anti-war?
I mean, he's anti-war in the same way that Trump was anti-war or a sort of anti-imperialist president, as some people right now.
Well, yeah. Trump's stance was like Japan should pay for the bases that we have there.
Right. Or it was kind of doing everything to stoke war and then kind of shying away at the last moment. I mean, I'll give Carlson some credit. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of credit. He seemingly was one of the most, or maybe the most influential figure in telling Trump in 2019 to kind of not follow through and actually start a war with Iran. That's good. But I mean, that's such a low bar. And it's the same thing with Trump. I mean, like, Trump didn't start any new wars, not totally without, for lack of trying. But I mean, is that really such a great thing? Does it mean he was a great president?
Yeah, I mean he also assassinated Soleimani and took us closer to the brink of war with Iran than we've been since the hostage crisis, even if you thought
increased drone strikes. Increased drone strikes rapidly, stoked tensions majorly with Russia. I mean, some of the most kind of the biggest accelerations in U.S.-Russia tensions that ultimately led to this horrific war.
Yeah, I mean, nobody
watching every day came under Trump, and that's so. It's such a low bar. Yes,
in 2023, but in 2012 there was this moment in one of the Obama-Romney debates where the candidates were asked, what's the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States? Obama said climate change, and Romney said Russia, and liberal America roundly mocked him for saying Russia, that this guy is living in the past. This is some sort of weird Cold War throwback. He doesn't know what year he's in. So the politics of that certainly changed dramatically, over the decades since then. But I believe, Jake, we have a clip of Tucker Carlson's answer to the same question. What's the biggest threat to the United States?
Russia is not America's main enemy, obviously. No sane person thinks it is. Our main enemy, of course, is China. And the United States ought to be in a relationship with Russia aligned against China to the extent that we can. China is the country that's currently, right now, murdering tens of thousands of Americans every year with fentanyl. It's depopulating parts of the country. It's pushing our life expectancy down. That's how profound a threat this is. It's coming from China, and our elites barely care. They won't even acknowledge it. In fact, many of our politicians run interference for the communist government of China instead.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an incredibly low bar, number one. Someone said, hey, maybe Iran, war with Iran is not a good idea. I don't think that means suddenly that they're like an incredibly courageous anti-war warriors. Maybe they're just kind of commonsensical and don't want to, potentially die or, see catastrophe happen. But number two, I mean, as that clip shows, the way to understand Carlson's stance in Ukraine, which some of those broadcasts, there were things said that I agreed with. Some of them, where he would outright kind of say, I'm actually on Russia's side here. I absolutely don't agree with it all. And as a very different, kind of a very peculiar kind of anti-war stance to be supporting a country that's invading another. But I mean,
it's a very subtle way of being anti-war to support the war.
Yeah, I mean the thing that he was doing, and this is unless you think Richard Nixon was some sort of profound peacenik, he was basically just updating Richard Nixon's playbook, which was during the Cold War. Him and others who were Cold War hawks, they quite rationally looked at a possible alliance between communist China and the USSR, and they said, "Oh, that would be absolutely catastrophic. There's no way that we could take on such a force. With the combination of Russian industrial might and its resources combined with the massive population of China. So what we have to do is we have to try and kind of peel these two countries away, which they have tensions and difficulties. The relationship is not a good one. So if we can sort of exploit that and actually widen this gap, then we can, maybe peel off China. We can just deal with the Soviet Union and more easily win the Cold War. That was Nixon's thinking. That's where the one China policy came from. And that's basically Carlson's kind of thinking, I think, that drives a lot of this kind of anti-war content on Ukraine. Is it's a flipping of that, because now there's no more Soviet Union. China is the only whatever nominally communist power, a great power in the world. He wants China to be defeated by the United States, and so it wasn't so much in that clip, but he has explicitly talked about the fact that right now this war is pushing China and Russia together, and that's a really threatening thing. We should be doing everything to kind of split them apart. That was his point. He wants the U.S., similar to other realists, similar to kind of maybe John Mearsheimer as well. I think they prefer that the U.S. aligns with Russia so that they can more easily defeat China. Now, a war with China, if you think a war with Russia is bad, and I think I do, and I think any rationally thinking person does, then get ready for what a war with China would look like. Because not only does that have the same exact nuclear risks, where we could all just end up, incinerated in a nuclear inferno, but also, Russia has immense resources that are vital to the world economy, but China is the largest, the world's largest trading partner. It's the largest trading partner of the majority of the world's countries, its trade with the United States is massive, whereas trade between the Soviet Union and the US was non-existent. So if there was a war between those two countries, that would be absolutely catastrophic. And this is what Tucker has spent not one or two segments, not the occasional segment where he's had Jimmy Dore on, not one or two lines here. He has spent years and segment after segment pushing this idea that China is a threat. It's responsible for everything bad in the United States. It's infiltrating everything that the people that run the country are beholden to it, so on and so forth. That the military and intelligence agencies have to get strengthened so we can take them on. It's not just a minor thing. You can't just say, well, I'll put that aside, but let's look at some of the other stuff he said. I mean, that's a major thing that he was pushing for the past 6 years, if not longer.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing to see him be serious for 1 minute.
Yeah, the China scare stuff on his show is like almost cartoonish. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, he had that guy, I can't remember his name. He's some right-wing, social media guy who said the throne of Chinese skulls thing. I don't know if you guys remember that clip.
It was in the context of like saying that the military got too woke.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, oh, we don't need, these like feminized blah, 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 guys in the military. We need the kind of men who dream of, I think it was drinking blood on a top of the road of Chinese skulls, as Tucker's like,
huh.
Good interesting point this guy's making. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, no, it's one, just in terms of Tucker's economic populism, it is amazing that his singular explanation of the fentanyl crisis is China.
Oh yeah,
not like U.S. economics, causing like poverty and despair. It's all this foreign. The problem is just coming from outside. But then two, I mean, it really does put the Ukraine stuff in perspective. Because, yeah, I mean, look, I'm with you, Branko. I think that it's like a certain amount of stuff that he says about Ukraine, like, you know, I don't think is wrong. I think that, like, we should be more worried about escalated tensions with Russia and, you know, the slim but terrifying possibility of World War III and all that stuff. And he did say some of that stuff on the show. And so I'm going to give him half a point for that. He would also say, like, I mean, look, I know this accusation is often made unfairly, but like, he actually was kind of a Putin apologist. Like, a lot of people have been accused of that who are not.
Yeah, that's like the hack joke that's coming out right now. Like, Putin needs another spokesperson.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that feels so hacky or whatever. But then you go and look at some of these segments. Like, I think he actually did one. I believe this is linked in Branko's piece, where he was actually, like, he actually starts with, like, you know, why have we been told to hate Vladimir Putin? You know, what's so bad? What's so bad about this guy? And it's like, even if we're just looking at his Ukraine position in isolation, that's still like a pretty profound difference between the sort of way that, from a left internationalist kind of perspective, you'd be anti-war and this sort of way of being anti-war. Like, you know, Eugene V. Debs, when he was being like arrested for speaking out against World War I, wasn't like, I don't think the Kaiser's a bad guy. Why is everybody talking about the Kaiser? You know, like, you know, take it for granted that, you know, that you should be in solidarity with the anti-war movement in Germany too, and, you know, all that. So it's like that's already a big difference. But it's like, all right, if you're just looking at Ukraine, I get how you could see it in a certain light, but he just could not be more explicit. It's like that clip that I just watched. It's like, yeah, his objection to heating up the conflict between the U.S. and Russia is that he thinks that the United States should be allied with Russia against China because, you know, that's really who you should, you know, stay up all night being terrified of. That's who you should want to, you know, like, what we really need is conflict with China.
Yeah. And I think it's like, what's interesting about having this discussion about Tucker, it's like he's reflecting the discourse as it is, and it's like the Russiagate stuff went so far that Tucker's talking point is now, yeah, let's ally with Putin because the Democrats have made him such a bogeyman. So yeah, I think it's interesting that I think, you know, I'm looking at the chat and some people are like, yeah, what's the point? Tucker, like, never made any serious points, but here he really was. And it's just showing, like, how bipolar this discussion has gotten, where it's, like, so removed from the actual circumstances.
And I think just to add one final thing to that, I mean, some people have I think they think of it as they're putting it out to me that oh, well, look, when Nancy Pelosi did her trip and, you know, completely reckless and stupid, and it just simply endangered Taiwan by doing it, that Carlson had a segment basically saying, you know, this is a stupid thing to do and she's provoking China. Yeah, that is true. And by the way, it's in the piece I wrote, so it's a completely pointless thing to put out to me. But if you actually look at what he said, he didn't say this is bad because it would lead to war with China and war with China is bad. His point was that the U.S. military is not in the position it needs to be able to fight a war with China. So fighting a war with Taiwan right now, and that's a direct quote from him, right now, is not in the U.S. interest. He's not saying that it's not in the U.S. interest, you know, in the long term or later on when the U.S. military, when there's, you know, tons more resources and money and waste has gone into the military industrial complex. He just means right now. And if you think that makes him a dove, then you must think that, you know, Elbridge Colby, a frequent guest of his, you know, one of the most extreme and I'd say influential China hawks out there, often in Tucker Carlson. Yeah, I mean, you must think he's a dove too, even though he is constantly talking about the need to fight China. And I mean, Colby went on Carlson's show and made that exact point on Pelosi's visit. He said, well, you know, Pelosi doing this is incredibly stupid. She's poking the dragon The U.S. is not where it needs to be right now to be able to actually properly have this fight. It's not anti-provocation; it's anti-provocation right now until the U.S. can, be in a position to wage this idiotic war. So I think just people, and there are people out there who I think think of themselves as left wingers, but think Carlson had some good, anti-war points. I think people need to actually properly reckon with this.
Yeah, I mean, and in the segment, you quoted in your article. In the Pelosi segment, he explicitly says in so many words that the problem with poking the dragon is that the military is too weak. That we need to build up the military. He also says, by the way, maybe of particular interest to some of his left or left adjacent fans, that we need a stronger CIA to fight China.
Yeah, not so much. Not really against the deep state so much. Carlson's objection to the CIA was that they were having young millennial employees. About having like generalized anxiety disorder. His whole thing was that the CIA, and that was this whole.
He didn't like that commercial with the cisgender millennial.
Yeah, the CIA. It was too woke, and I mean that's the same thing. People pass around this story, this Politico story that the military or military officials celebrate Tucker Carlson's ouster, and I think that was also the passing it around as being like, see. He was against the military-industrial complex. He was against the national security establishment. Look how happy they are he's gone. But you read the piece, and what they say, the people quoted are saying, is that they were annoyed because he was constantly insulting the military and saying it was weak and it couldn't fight very well, and that it had too many women.
Like, we're just trying to recruit more people. Like, shut up.
yeah, exactly.
Anybody.
Yeah, precisely. So it's not that they thought, oh wow, his the stuff he's saying is too dangerous because it exposes the decades of U.S. government malfeasance on the world stage.
Yeah.
Do you think they? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out, that the woke, all that woke advertising for recruitment in the military and the intelligence services is like because they're trying to attract more educated people. They're having this problem of more intellectual people going to Silicon Valley and getting higher paying jobs. And now they're like, we'll freeze your eggs. You could be trans, whatever. Just come fight for us. Like that's what it was about.
We'll give you a free PlayStation, just anything, please sign up. Do you think that it's all just sort of a scare tactic? Because they have to have some inkling that a war with China would be a total, devastating disaster. Is it just rhetoric to build up the military-industrial complex and all that stuff? Is that the whole point of all that stuff?
I think that he maybe doesn't want a full-on war with China. I do think probably Carlson's not a total idiot. I think he probably understands that a war would be pretty disastrous for a number of reasons. But he clearly wants for a more confrontational and
at the very
attitude. To treat China as an enemy, and you can say, oh well, that he's not maybe going for full on war. Although again, he says war may be inevitable and we have to prepare for it. But why is it inevitable? It's inevitable because people like himself constantly present it as being as there being no other option. The only possible option. It can't be that the U.S. and China, for all the differences and for all the many terrible criticisms you can make of the Chinese government and what it does. That it can't be possible for these two countries to coexist and maybe even cooperate to deal with some of the world's worst crises. He never presents that side. He only presents the side where this country is a threat. It's destroying America, and we have to confront it. And so whether he wants war or not doesn't really make a lot of difference because at the end of the day,
I think it's roughly parallel to like anti-Russia hawks that. Even though obviously there were the really crazy people saying a year ago that we should set up a no-fly zone in Ukraine, but I think for the most part, the people who constantly bluster in super hawkish ways about Russia don't, there is that last little lingering shred of insanity saying that okay, probably we can't have an all-out direct hot war between the United States and Russia, because then everybody would die. but they certainly want, something more confrontational than we're doing right now. And similarly, it seems like Tucker, at the very least, wants like a real full-on Cold War with China. By the way, I love the point, Branko, that you make in the piece that like all of the things that were so dumb about Russiagate, like Tucker just replicates for anti-China purposes. I mean, we saw a little bit of that in the clip that the, like the politicians he doesn't like are in the pockets of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, the same exact stuff he complains about that people are doing with him. And by the way, in the Jacobin piece I wrote, I actually defended Carlson. I said, this is a pretty disgraceful way to basically attack anti-war criticism or anti-war dissent. Whatever you think about Carlson, I think it's pretty clear what we all think of him on this podcast. I said, this is just a really shameful way to carry out any sort of political debate. But he constantly engaged in that exact kind of thing. He was always saying that he literally said, the Biden administration and basically Democratic lawmakers are deliberately weakening the country so that they can lose to China. He was constantly saying that again, not even implying it, just saying, these people were in cahoots with the Chinese government. So I unfortunately I have to go, but I'll just say very quickly, I think, having said all this, I don't think, I've never been one of these people who says people shouldn't go on Tucker Carlson. If you want to go on there and be able to reach millions of people, the people on the left, go ahead and do so. I don't care. There's so many terrible people with terrible opinions that have control of media apparatuses that, to make one exception, it's very difficult to say why one is you absolutely can't do this, but you can go on CNN, which pushed the Iraq War, or MSNBC. But what I will say is, where I think we should draw the line is, suddenly pretending that Tucker Carlson is some sort of politically virtuous truth teller. You can say, go on a show, use that platform to advance the views that you think people should hear, but don't go around saying that he's some sort of hero or some sort of anti-imperialist.
Chris Smalls went on Tucker and I think handled it perfectly, and I'm glad he did. Got some extra eyes on the Amazon labor union's efforts, but I haven't seen him. I haven't seen Smalls, tweeting about how, Tucker is like a genuine populist who was fired because of his brave stance on Ukraine or anything like that.
Because he, took on business executives on the broadcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, for sure.
What he's doing is just like what we're doing at Amazon. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that take, and and I think the anti-China stuff is really, like, I think the last thing maybe before letting Branko go, just to say about this is like, if it seems like really harping on it, like, it's like, okay, whatever, like if you're going to make some sort of like contrarian case for Tucker, you got to start with like, okay, obviously he has a lot of awful positions, it's going to be a despite everything thing, it's like, okay, he might be like really racist, so he throws in demographic change, to his list at the beginning. But, by the way, I don't think that's a separate issue from the alleged economic populism. I think that's, I think the classic cartoon with the guy with the, the one cookie on his plate and the rich guy has 20 cookies on his plate is like, oh yeah, that immigrant is trying to take your cookie, is apt there. But the China thing is not just like, oh, he has some shitty positions. That's one of them. We're talking about this guy who until last week was the most popular host on cable TV at a time when relations between the United States and China actually have gotten worse and worse. And in fact, there has been a lot of aggressive bipartisan effort to disentangle us from China, to escalate tensions between the United States and China, and, I don't know, might ban TikTok eventually, et cetera. And like some of, like, I think the last point I would make before saying goodbye to Branko is just like all of this stuff does have an impact in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one way to look at this is just what it says about how a terrible cable news is, how it's just this barren landscape. I mean, he's right about that in that video that we watched. I mean, it is just this highly conformist, empty media landscape where everyone just says the same thing and they talk about things that don't matter, and they have big loud arguments about stuff that actually doesn't have any real impact on people. And I think that's the thing. The fact that we have given Carlson some very limited praise, I think, just shows how just deprived of any kind of real substance cable news, that someone like that could sort of get actually a pretty big audience from just deviating from orthodoxy in tiny little ways here and there. And maybe somebody out there who has a budding television career or is even out there now might look at Carlson's success and say, hey, you know what, maybe there's actually a real hunger out there for people to watch stuff that actually does challenge power, but in a real way, not in the fake way that Carlson did, but in a real way that actually might get some ratings. Wouldn't that be nice to see? I don't think it's going to happen, but anyway, it was good to be with you guys. I'm sorry I have to gap it.
Thanks, Branko.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Branko's piece in Jacobin is Tucker Carlson Isn't the Anti-Imperialist, his Rabid China Hawk. People should check that out. But while I still have the other 2/3 of the panel, we do have one more Tucker clip to do as we're doing.
Let's check it out.
As we're finishing our survey of all of his positions. Jake, do we have the remaining Tucker clip?
Bet you didn't think M&Ms were pushing intolerance, but they were. They've been changed. You're seeing the changes right now on your screen. The green M&M, you will notice, is no longer wearing sexy boots. Now she's wearing sensible sneakers. Why the change? Well, according to M&M's, quote, we all win when we see more women in leading roles because leading women do not wear sexy boots. Leading women wear frumpy shoes. The frumpier, the better. That's the rule. The other big change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, we've achieved equity. They've won.
That's some hard-hitting analysis.
Yeah, I do like the image of him like having a drink with the M&Ms, like him desperately trying to come up with conversation topics to keep the green M&M interested, you know what I mean?
So how much Pepsi do you actually drink?
Exactly. Yeah, he was crushing. He was crushing pretty hard on that green M&M. I don't know, like I almost think it's too bad because he is kind of an odd guy, like his mannerisms are sort of odd. And it would, if he just stayed away from the like kind of wretched political stuff that he gets into, he might have been a funny guy, like almost to do like a Dave Attell Insomniac kind of thing where he just goes to bars and stuff and he's kind of awkward. He's way overdressed and he just talks to normal people. Might have been funny. You know what I mean? Like,
he did have some genuinely funny. I mean, I didn't watch that much, but there was one thing that really made me cackle was like, it's like Kamala Harris says surprise at her own surprise birthday party. It was like, that was the lower third.
Yeah, his lower thirds are pretty amazing too. Like they'll just spin the whole conversation. It's a good lower third work on the Tucker Carlson program.
Yeah.
I just really like the implication that, he's turned off when the shoes change. So
yeah,
he was turned on before.
Right.
You should see it. Look at a drag queen. That's high femme.
Okay, but I mean, a drag queen, I mean, that's not really a woman. Whereas like a M&M, that's confusing.
The M&M is now wearing sensible shoes. She just moved to Bushwick, like she's just trying to fit in. She's got a big denim jacket,
Yeah. Yeah, it is fun. It is a little interesting how hard M&M's leaned into that, like the green M&M being hot thing. Like some of the older commercials are like, they're really like, no, the green M&M is hot, guys. Like, come on, Like they really went for it, and Tucker Carlson seems to have really affected him, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess she had the last laugh because Tucker has lost his show, but I'm sure that he's not gone forever. Nobody in 2023 is gone forever. If you have any kind of audience, it will pop up.
Where do we think he's going to be?
Yeah, I wonder about that because he does seem like the kind of guy who probably, I don't know, I'm curious what you guys think. Like, I feel like he probably thinks that just doing social media is beneath him because he's been doing big cable news for so long that he feels like that's maybe like a class thing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean,
wonder.
he could certainly have absolute worst case scenario. I mean, if he wanted to just have like a podcast, I mean, it's that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have. I'm sure he would have a wildly successful one. I mean, he is unfortunately good at this, and there's no reason he couldn't do that. I could definitely see him thinking that was beneath him, but I guess the question is like, if he's not willing to do that, does he just retire? I kind of have a hard time imagining that either.
Yeah, me too. I wonder what he's gonna do. Probably Rumble or something. Maybe Rumble, maybe just a podcast. But it's funny. Like I've watched a bunch of his show, and he does do these weird segments. Like sometimes he'll just go off on like aliens. Like he's really interested in aliens. Or I remember he did a segment where somebody had like a raccoon as a pet. Like he really likes that too. It would be great to just see him do all that. It's just aliens, raccoons, just all that would be, yeah, I saw this too. The Blade Runner thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can see the appeal of that. Like, I mean, I actually liked it when Keith Olbermann came back to ESPN for a minute, and he was doing essentially the same show he always did on MSNBC, except all he was doing was talking about sports. And it's like, it's like actually a decently entertaining format. And if it's not like attached to these like super vapid like lib political opinions, then it's like, yeah, okay, I'll watch that. And then he like lost that show right away. I assume he's very hard to work with, but but yeah, I could like if Tucker Carlson, decided to lay off the immigrants and trans people in the nation of China and the M&M. No, you know what? Fuck it. He could still talk about the M&Ms. He just wanted to do a show about raccoon pets and and M&Ms and all that. Like it's like, yeah, no, more power to him. I'll watch.
Absolutely, full support.
That would be good content.
Fair enough. RM, start with you. Where can people find your stuff?
Just YouTube channel RM Brown, and that's pretty much it. Twitter, I think what's my Twitter handle? RM Brown X2, I think. Maybe follow me on there. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I know.
I don't know your Twitter handle. Come on, man.
I know. I messed up. I never thought anybody would find me on Twitter, but a couple people have. So yeah, I messed up on that one. Whoops.
Naomi?
I'm Naomi Karavani on all platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I lost my blue check, which is pretty sad.
Oh man. Isn't there like some kind of hack to get it back? Did you see that? Where you like type something in and it gets your blue check back? People have been talking about that. I don't know if it's real or not.
I will be looking for that because
did you value the blue check a lot?
The deal that you could get the blue check back, but it would go back to Russian state affiliated media.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had the same boss as Tucker for a while. Yeah.
Exactly. Fair enough. Well, check that out. Thank you both so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having
me.
All right. So yeah, do check both of those people out. Naomi at her name and RM Brown at X1 5, 7, whatever the fuck that was. Meanwhile, though, before we go to the post game for patrons, do just want to plug one last thing while we're in the main show. So next Monday, if nothing changes, we're going to have Lillian Sekerchia on. We're going to talk about Karl Marx's book, The Poverty of Philosophy. And speaking of that book, I am going to be doing a class on the GTAA Patreon where we're going to read first Proudhon's book, The Philosophy of Poverty, and then Marx's response, The Poverty of Philosophy. So that's going to be, I'm going to be away at going to a wedding next weekend, but I think that's going to start the Sunday after next. Sunday mornings from, afternoons from 1 to 3. If you're in the Eastern time zone, that seems to be the time that works the best for people in different time zones who take these classes. We just finished a long one on Capital, which is why we're switching gears to do that. So you'll hear much more about that next week. Meanwhile, though, we are about to go to the post game with our live show producer, Jordan Dubin. We are going to be talking Slavoj Žižek, looking at a couple of his articles. Fun should be had by all. So if you are not a GTAA patron yet, that's Ben Burgis, patreon.com/Ben Burgis, $5 a month. Get the patron exclusive post games after every regular Monday night episode, access to the Discord server, our eternal love and gratitude for helping to keep this thing going. And then, you could also sign up for the higher tier if you want to take the class. So go do that. But if you are a patron, you should already have the link to the post game, and we're going to go do that right now. Happy May Day. Left is best.